My name is Louise Bates. I publish under the name of E.L. Bates, and my book is Death by Disguise, and it is book 3 in the Whitney and Davies mystery fantasy series. So the Whitney and Davies series came about as the result of asking myself what would happen if I combined Agatha Christie and magic. So it is a series that takes place in 1920s England, and it's a detective series, but there is magic that is underlying the entire world. And the main protagonists are both magicians and detectives, and have to navigate using both of those skills to solve the mysteries that come their ways. Went to the library and I found the Sorcery and Cecilia novels by Patricia C. Reed and Caroline Stevermer, which are Regency fiction with magic. And it was so much fun to read. And I thought, oh, this is the sort of thing that I want to write. I want to write something fun like this. But I'm like, well, I can't do it with Regency fiction because they've already done it. I was like, well, what is it that I am reading that when it's not fantasy? And I looked at my shelf and there was all my Agatha Christie's. And I thought, oh, Agatha Christie with magic. That could be really cool. So I started reading Agatha Christie novels when I was probably about 12 years old. And the very first ones that I read of hers were the Tommy and Tuppence series, and just fell in love with her way of not just of constructing a very clever mystery, but of really making her characters come to life with a very few words. Since Tommy and Tuppence were my first love of Agatha Christie, I thought, well, what if I had a duo who were the main detectives instead of one main detective and a dumb sidekick? And then I was like, and then what if I swapped the personalities so that the Tommy character was actually the female and that the Tuppence character was the male? And that was really what kicked off the whole thing. It was a lot of fun to start building this world because I started out by asking myself a lot of questions. All right, is magic going to be something that everyone is aware of? Is this going to be a world that's like ours, but where magic is obvious, or is it going to be really this world but with magic hidden? And the more questions that I answered, the more questions that ended up raising. Like there are certain expectations in a detective novel, and so you have to follow certain rules. You don't cheat your readers, you don't withhold clues from them, you don't have the bad guy turn out to be someone that was never on stage, all that sort of thing. And so for writing this type of story, building this type of world, then meant that the magic kind of logically needed to have a certain set of rules that I followed as well. So for this world, magic only works with the natural world. So anything that is artificial or like man-made, magic can't affect. With setting it in 1920s, you have a world that is really shifting from a more the pre-World War I era where things were still a little bit more in touch with the natural world to a much more industrialized, machine-driven era. And so the magic system ended up melding really nicely with what was going on in the real world. Writing a series is really fun and challenging, and it's for the same reason, which is that you are sticking with the same set of characters for a really long time. So it's fun because I do get to know them more and more with each book, and then it's challenging because there has to be a natural character growth, but then they also each book they have to have more growth that comes. So you don't want to have them have all of this growth in one book and then in the next book they're going back to this point and have to do it all over again. You want it to be continual, but then at some point, at some point they're going to have grown about as much as you can handle. And I mean, I suppose if I was really doing it the way Agatha Christie did, I could just keep them static throughout the whole thing. Poirot never really changed much from the first book to the final book in terms of his personality or character. But for me, characters are the best part of writing stories. And so if they're not growing and changing, then the story is also going to be very flat and very boring. Write what you love, without worrying about whether it's original, without worrying about whether it's popular or it's going to sell. Because number one, if you write what you love, you're going to find that that love comes through and makes it engaging for other people. And number two, if you're not writing what you love, by the time you're done with the story, you're going to be so sick of it. So, and you'll never want to see it again. So you better be loving it when you start.